What would you trade for the person you love to see again? Your money, your pride, your name, your soul. If a signature could flip on the lights in their world but turn yours off, would you pick up the pen or walk away? I found out the day a billionaire slid a check across a glass table and asked me to put a price on love. Yeah, that happened. I'm Donald, and this is the most honest way I know to tell it. Not fancy, not dressed up. Just how it felt moving through heat sirens, waiting rooms, boardrooms, and that quiet place where you stare at the ceiling and bargain with God. If it were you, what would you have done? It started on a day Lagos turned the sun all the way up. You know that afternoon glare that makes cars look like hot coins, that makes your shirt glue itself to your back. I just walked out of yet another interview with the same line that sounds polite but always means no. We'll be in touch. Sure. I turned down a side street, already counting the bus fare in my head, when I heard a car choke, cough, and die, and a woman's voice cut through traffic. Not a scream, just tight, urgent. Sorry, ma'am. You okay? I said. Because you don't walk past a sound like that. She was standing there by the hood, calm but frustrated, the kind of woman you can tell has people for everything. Hair people, shoe people, paperwork people. Except right now her car wouldn't start, and none of those people were here. Later I'd learn her name was Cynthia. That afternoon she was just this beautiful, composed woman with a dead battery terminal and a whole lot of bad luck. I told her the truth about that street. Not a great place to abandon a car. If you leave it, they'll remove something you didn't know could be removed. She gave me a look that said, "Try me," so I popped the hood. I'm not a mechanic, but I've been broke long enough to be dangerous with a wrench. The battery terminal was loose, the kind of problem that hides until you bounce over a speed bump, and then the car acts dramatic. I tightened it. "Try it," I said. She turned the key, engine purred to life like nothing ever happened. She clapped, actually clapped right there on the roadside, and laughed. "Thank you," she said, and I told her it was nothing. Just don't park here again, unless she wanted to lose parts she didn't know she owned. "Where were you headed?" she asked. "Let me give you a lift." "I'm good," I said, because pride can be dumb even when your pockets are whispering. I was just coming from a job interview. I didn't bother adding that I'd been chasing one opportunity after another, that my thumbs were tired from filling out forms on a cracked phone screen. "What kind of job?" she asked. I said any job, and when those words left my mouth, they tasted like defeat and hope at the same time. She reached into a leather bag that probably cost more than my rent, pulled out a thick card that felt like a promise. "Come to my office tomorrow," she said. "Let's see what we can do." I thanked her twice, then again, because sometimes gratitude leaks out of you when you're surprised. I walked home clutching that card like it was a passport, smelling the ink, reading the name, Cynthia, and the title that told me she wasn't just anybody. I got to the door of our small apartment, the one with the door frame I'd bumped 100 times, and that's when the weight hit me, because tomorrow was already spoken for. Tomorrow was Miriam's day. Let me back up one step. Miriam. My Miriam. The woman who laughed with her whole face before an accident, made laughter a memory. We were on a corner, just an ordinary afternoon. Group of boys yelling, bikes buzzing past a driver more impatient than skilled. And then suddenly, the front of a car was too close. She didn't think, she just moved. Hands on my chest, shoved, the world jerked sideways, that sick sound of metal and bone, and then everything inside me emptied out. I remember kneeling, calling her name that first time gently, then louder when she didn't answer, and the lights, the sirens, the hospital whispering in its cold voice, "Internal bleeding surgery, pray." We sold everything that had a name, pawned the nameless things too, and paid the deposit. Surgery was a blur of forms and fluorescent lights and pacing. When she woke, she turned her head toward me, smiled weakly, and said, Why did you turn off the light? That sentence still makes my rib cage feel like a drum because we hadn't turned anything off. Doctors were careful, kind. They said the impact did something delicate. It might heal, it might not. Later, a specialist said there was a procedure not guaranteed but promising, and the price dropped into the room like a brick. 7 million. I tried to picture 7 million in anything. Coins, bread loaves, hours worked, and my mind refused. You ever feel your future get heavy in a single sentence? That. So when Cynthia's card landed in my hand, it felt like a lifeline tied to a question. I told Miriam about the card, about the offer to come by, about the way the car just started, like it respected me. She squeezed my hand and said, "Go. Please. We can move the appointment. We need this. But love makes you stubborn in strange ways." I shook my head. You first, I told her, and tomorrow became a negotiation with fate. We went to the hospital. We waited. Do you know how long a hallway can become when you're measuring time by the sound of footsteps and the weight of envelopes? I bought bread from a stall and pretended it was lunch. That night, when the power cut and the heat rose like a second skin, I sat on the edge of the bed and fanned Miriam with a cardboard flyer until my shoulders ached, because if you've ever loved somebody trapped in a dark room, you'd move air with your hands forever. You know what I mean? The next morning, I walked into Cynthia's office ready to apologize for missing the day before. Floor-to-ceiling glass white orchids that looked expensive just to be alive, the kind of space that says money without shouting. I told her the truth. My girlfriend was sick, I had to be with her. I braced for the frown, the lecture. She tilted her head, studied me like I was a new formula. "So your girlfriend comes first," she said, not as a question. "Even over a job." "She's my life," I said, and I meant it. Something in her expression changed. Not a smile exactly, something softer than that. "I need a personal assistant," she said, "and a driver. If one person can do both better for me." Salary $600,000 a month. I did the math wrong 3 times in my head before I did it right. I said yes. Sometimes the only answer is yes. For a minute there, life felt like it might let us breathe. I learned Cynthia's rhythm. Morning tea with a particular sweetness, the way she prepped a pitch, the deals she was chasing, how the room hummed when she walked in. She was smart. The kind of smart that made other people pretend not to be threatened. Before our first big presentation together, I saw her leg bouncing under the table, this nervous drum she didn't know she was playing. "If you go in like that, you'll trip," I told her, gentle, not a command, just truth. "Breathe. Remember, you built this talk like the best person in the room, because you probably are." She laughed. The tension broke, she went in and crushed it. And on the way out, she turned the music up and let herself be happy like a kid. At home, happiness looked different. It looked like boiled yam and stew, gentle hands on sore temples, counting out pills, talking about nothing, when talking about darkness felt like too much. Nights were long. When heat lives in your city, you learn to fight it with little tricks. Wet cloth, small fan prayer. I fanned her, she slept, I watched her eyelids move and wondered what dream the dark could give you. Then came the day the specialist circled on the calendar. He said he could fix it. He also said the number again, and this time it didn't land like a surprise. It landed like a deadline. 7 million. If cash was courage, I would have been a warrior, but cash is not courage, cash is cash. And ours was thin. I told my best friend, the practical one who looks out for me even when he sounds rough. "Work," I said, "earn her trust, ask for a loan, pay it back month by month." He nodded like he wanted to believe, then he shook his head, honest as always. "Time is not on your side." The emergency trip came on a Sunday. Out of town last minute, the kind of thing you can't decline if you like your job. Miriam pressed my wrist. Go, she said, we need this. In the hotel, the booking agent messed up. 1 room short. I told Cynthia I'd take the couch without thinking. She said she couldn't put me through that after a long drive. I said I'd slept on worse. We had this quiet tug of war where you both want to be considerate and still hold the line. I slept on the couch. That detail matters to me not because I want applause, but because we all need to know we still know where the lines are. We got the deal. I bought scarves for Miriam, and a dress I knew she'd love just from the way the fabric felt under my hand. I wish I could see them, she said, and I told her soon with a confidence I didn't completely own. I said it anyway, because sometimes you speak light into a room and pray it obeys. Then the music changed. Cynthia called me into her home office one afternoon. Her leg hurt from a stupid twist on an exercise bike, so I helped prop it up. Adjusted the pillow, did the kind of gentle that doesn't feel like work, if you're built for service. She watched me for a long second, and when she finally spoke, her voice had that soft, slow quality you hear right before a big ask. How much is your girlfriend's surgery? She asked, like she hadn't filed that number away already. 7 million, I said, and even saying it made me feel small. She slid a check toward me. Not in an envelope, not in a folder. Naked like a dare. My name written with a confident hand. The number below it made my stomach drop and my palms sweat. 15 million. Take it, she said. Cover her surgery, keep the rest. There's a condition. I knew the condition before she breathed it out. Don't ask me how. There are moments you see the shape of what's coming, and you still pretend you don't. I want you to be mine, she said simply. Leave Miriam. Be with me. Everything got quiet. The AC hummed but sounded far away, and the city outside felt like it leaned in to listen. I stood up because sitting felt like agreeing. No, I said, and I heard my voice surprise both of us. No amount of money buys my love. I can't imagine my life without Miriam. She didn't get angry, that almost made it worse. She was calm, reasonable, persuasive, kind even. Think it through, she said. After you pay for transport, food bills, clothes, how much can you save? How long should she wait? Blind. You said you'd do anything. This is anything. I left her house with the check still sitting on the table, walked until my feet stopped arguing with my head. I told my friend. He threw his hands up. Do the thing he said, not because he hates love, but because he knows numbers. Let her see. When she sees, she can work you rebuild. This is a shortcut everyone takes if they can. A shortcut to where I snapped and it came out ugly to being a man I don't recognize when I brush my teeth. Pattern interrupt, because my heart still rushes here. I wish I could tell you I stayed strong forever, and we all lived on principles and air. That would be a pretty lie. The next week I went back to Cynthia, stomach in my throat, dignity trailing behind me like a tired dog. I'll do it, I said on one condition. She raised an eyebrow like she was amused that I thought I had leverage. I want to go through the surgery with her, be there, make sure she's taken care of. She nodded. Fine. After that, no contact. No calls, no visits. I nodded back and felt something inside me fold up and put itself away. I told Miriam a half-truth that tasted like a lie. My boss agreed to help and will deduct it from my salary. I said, trying to hold eye contact. Like eye contact can wash a sin. She cried, she prayed, she said, God bless her. And I wanted to sink into the floor, because the one thing she always loved most about me was I told the truth even when we couldn't afford it. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. I say that half joking, because this is the part people argue over in the comments. Was it noble? Was it stupid? Was it both? Surgery day. Hospitals glow with this cold energy that makes you talk softer. I signed forms until my hand cramped. The surgeon walked with the confidence of a man who knew his craft. They wheeled Miriam past me in a gown that never fits right, bandages waiting like a promise, and I whispered, "2 days, my love, 2 days, and you see me first." She smiled and said, "You'll be the first face," and I nodded like vows could control time. 2 days is not a long time unless you've made a deal with your conscience that keeps you awake. I slept in Cynthia's guest room, stared at the ceiling, listened to a house too quiet, felt like I'd tucked my heart into a drawer I couldn't open until the bandages came off. The morning of reveal day, I ironed my only truly crisp shirt, twice checked my phone, checked it again. And then, and this is the part I still hate, the day yanked me sideways. A contract glitch, a driver misrouted a printer we all wanted to throw out a window. I kept glancing at the clock, said I'd leave in 5, said I'd leave in 2, said I'd leave now, and still when I ran into the hospital breathless, it was too late. I saw her through the glass. Nurse leaning in, hands gentle at the knot of the bandage light, hitting the side of Miriam's face, Clara at her shoulder with tears already there. The cloth came away. Miriam blinked like a person walking out of rain into a bright room. "I can see shapes," she said, and her voice broke. "It's blurry, but it's there." The nurse said it would sharpen. It would sharpen. I stood in the doorway like a thief, and then I did the worst thing. I stepped back. I told myself I didn't want to break the rule and lose the money. I told myself I'd surprise her later. I told myself I was doing this for us. I told myself a lot of things. None of them felt like me. I didn't call that night. Or the next. On the third morning there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and Miriam stood there, in a blue headscarf we'd picked together by touch, Clara behind her, like a bodyguard. Miriam's eyes were clear now, not fully, but enough to look straight into me. I did the cruelest thing I hope I'll ever do. I told her it was over. I told her Cynthia was the best thing that ever happened to me. I told her she was a weight I couldn't carry, that I was done with low life. I watched the words land like stones, watched her absorb them like a fighter taking body blows, and I hated myself more with each sentence. She didn't scream, she didn't make a scene, she just nodded, once, and left. If it were you, could you have said those words to the person who saved your life so they'd walk away and live thinking you were a monster, while you tried to tell yourself it was love? Do you think that's fair? That night was long and poisonous. Cynthia asked me the question she'd kept on a shelf. Do you love her? I don't know how to lie to a question like that, so I said the air, the water, the way your body knows how to breathe. She closed her eyes, and something in her face softened. Not like victory, more like surrender to a loss she swore she wouldn't take. Meanwhile, Clara was not buying this act we were all committed to. She showed up at Cynthia's office and told the truth like it had a blade. You paid for her eyes on the condition. He becomes yours, she said, and now he's sticking to his side while you realize you can't buy what you thought you could. She was harsh because she was protecting her friend. Cynthia listened, jaw-tight, eyes swimming with that complicated mix of anger and hurt, and a little bit of shame. Then came the twist, the real twist, the one that flipped the whole table. Miriam came to see me, not to plead, not to perform. She walked into the lobby where I was waiting for a car and said in a voice so calm it made my throat ache, "Did you trade us for my sight?" The world slowed down, the skyscraper outside leaned in again, and I felt like the only human in a frozen city. If I said no, I lied to everything that made me who I am. If I said yes, I stabbed her twice. I didn't answer right away because I couldn't find a sentence big enough to hold the truth. Finally, I said the only thing that fit in my mouth. I thought I was saving us. She nodded once like a judge passing a sentence no one else could hear. I would have chosen you blind, she said, then turned and left, and my knees almost gave. Cynthia texted me that night. Come by. I did. She stood by the window back to me, the city lights painting her in cold color. When she turned around, something was different in her eyes. Not power, not desire, something like acceptance. Pack your things, she said. Get out of my house, out of my company. I transferred $5 million. Don't argue. I'm leaving the country for a while. Heal whatever is broken. And don't let me run into you at brunch. I opened my mouth to apologize, not for leaving, but for the hurt we'd both built with our bare hands. She raised a hand, gentle but firm. Do you love her? She said again one more time, like she wanted to be wrong. With the air, I said again, because truth doesn't change just because it's inconvenient. She nodded. Then go. I went home. The key turned in a lock that felt heavier than it used to. The door swung open, and Miriam stood there in that blue dress I'd bought with hope, the one she'd only known by texture. Her eyes, the eyes I helped restore in the worst way, watched me like she was reading a book where I was both villain and hero, and I had to tell the truth out loud or drown in it. I made a deal and called it love. I said, voice scraping. I broke your heart to save your sight. I know that's not a trade decent people make, but I made it. If you never forgive me, I deserve it. If you do, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure love never has a price tag again. She let the silence stretch until it wasn't cruel anymore, just necessary. Come inside, she said. At last we'll argue where there are chairs. And we did. We argued like two people who wanted to stay. We were honest in the ugly ways first. Her anger like a knife she knew how to use without killing my shame, not asking for sympathy. By the time the night turned into morning, we hadn't tied a bow on anything, but we had made a knot, and sometimes a knot is how you start again. People always ask, what about Cynthia? Was she a villain? Was she a savior? Was she just lonely, with too much power and not enough people telling her no? A week later, she boarded a plane to London. She texted me a line I didn't expect. Be good. I typed back, be free. Do you think money always gets what it wants, or do you still believe love gets a vote? Drop your answer below because I can't pretend this is simple. Here's the part that keeps me up. We live in a world where the difference between darkness and light can be the size of a number on a check, where a boss can test a man's heart on a weekday, where dignity and medicine end up in the same conversation, like that's normal. You want a tidy moral? I don't have one. I have a life I'm trying to live right. A woman whose eyes find my face across a room now, and glow, and a scar inside me that reminds me, good intentions can be a wrecking ball if you swing them wrong. So let me ask you, if it were you, would you take the check and hope to explain later? Would you hold the line and watch the love of your life sit in darkness? Would you find a third way I didn't see because my fear was too loud? Do you think that was fair? Any of it? Should a surgery be a test of character instead of a test of medicine? Tell me below, be honest. I would never as easy when it's not your person in a hospital bed. I'll leave you with this. Love is not proved by fancy speeches or Instagram captions. It's proved at 2 a.m. when the power cuts and the room turns into a furnace, when your hand keeps fanning because her breath is shallow and hot, when you plate food you can barely afford and pretend it tastes like celebration, when you turn down things that glitter because they turn you into someone you don't want to be. And when you fail, because maybe you will, maybe not as loudly as I did, but still, love is also in the getting up, the confession, the hard work of repair. If this story made you pause, argue with me in your head, yell at the screen, nod in secret, talk to me. Was Cynthia a monster, or a woman making a terrible move out of an empty place? Was I noble or just a fool with a savior complex? Was Miriam's forgiveness too easy, or the bravest act in the whole mess? And beyond the three of us, how do we build a world where no one has to sign away their future to pay for eyesight, where emergencies aren't auctions? I'm not naive. There will always be numbers, but maybe the price shouldn't be our hearts. Stick around, because of the next story I'm about to share, the one where a neighborhood committee nearly cost a veteran his home, is going to make you think even harder about power and kindness and the thin line between order and control. If this one hit you, tap like so it travels, share it with that one friend who swears love is a scam. Subscribe if you want more true life told the way it lives. Messy, loud, honest. And most of all, drop your story. The time, money, and love wrestled in your living room, the choice you made, the thing you'd do differently now. I'll be in the comments, reading, learning, trying to be a better man than I was yesterday. Your turn. Was I wrong? Was I right? Or was I just human? Let's talk.